Well, good evening and welcome to 19 Miles Presents, coming to you live in Franklin, Tennessee, and streaming from some whiz-bang satellite in outer space somewhere where the Jetsons live and other people like that. We're glad to have you here. Welcome, welcome. I'm happy to report that all incumbent members of the 19 Miles Committee were re-elected on November 3rd. And Pastor Brian Brooks has dropped all his lawsuits for a recount. So I think we're up and running here as usual, and we're going to have a good time. So on behalf of the committee, which is comprised of Bill Deaton, Jody Todd, Cortland Fuqua, Rusty Harmon, Denny Wayne Rudolph, and yours truly, Dan Keene, we are always welcome here in person or online. And we thank you for coming and tuning in this evening. It's a pleasure to have you. Tonight, our format is a little different. The entire show this evening will feature songwriter, artist, composer, and NSAI, that's Nashville Songwriters Association International, NSAI Hall of Fame member, Marcus Hummon. Marcus and I met a few decades ago. We, through a friend of ours, a really good publisher, a mutual friend named Michael Purrier, and as a trio, the three of us wowed and zowed many crowds of famous celebrities all over the world. Well, okay, it was one song, and it was one crowd at a friend's retirement party. But still, it was just amazing, I'm telling you, it was amazing. I also had another crossing paths moment with Marcus that was wonderful. Some of you may know that there's a job in Nashville called a session singer and session players, those people that play on the records and sing background on the records. And I made my living doing that for quite some time. And we were cutting an album, singing on an album by Michael Martin Murphey. Do you remember him? She ran calling wildfire, that guy. And man, we were grooving on this song called Pilgrims on the Way. You know, and session singers are kind of jaded, you know, they don't really respond. They hear so many songs, but everybody was on fire for this song. It's a great song. It became a single for Michael Martin Murphey. It was Marcus Hummon's first single, too. So it's fun to come in and out of circles and see each other tonight, and I love that about old time, about growing old, actually, that you can circle back and around and come in contact with friends and people, and it's very, very rewarding. Marcus has written 5 #1 country songs, all right? He had Dixie Chicks' Cowboy Take Me Away. He also wrote Ready to Run, which counts, I think, as a #1, but oh well. Sarah Evans, Born to Fly. Winona Judd, Only Love. He plays that cool, funky guitar part on the record also. Tim McGraw, One of These Days, but his 5th #1 is probably the one that you folks know him the best from. That is a song that was an oldie in his catalog, but years and years later, and he's got a great story about it, a group called Rascal Flatts recorded his song, God Bless the Broken Road. And that song, of course, won a Grammy Award for Song of the Year, and it's just taken on a life of its own. It goes everywhere. It's a wonderful thing. So, and in addition, Marcus has written 6 musicals. I've seen a couple of them. He's written an opera. So quite an interesting, deep thinker and interesting creative guy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome to 19 Miles Presents, Marcus Hummon. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. He's going to get set up here, and we want to talk a little bit about family.
Did you all hear when he was telling about being a session singer? Did you hear how good he sang Wildfire there?
I still got it, baby. Still got it. Oh, the piano on that, Jack Murphy. The piano.
Oh, man.
Oh, buddy. Well, before I turn you loose on the music, which you know we're of course anxious to hear, I think some of these folks also might be aware of your wife, a lady that you met at Vanderbilt Divinity School.
That's right.
You want to talk about that and tell us what she's up to these days?
Yeah, no, I go places and folks go, oh wow, you're Becca Stevens' husband, you know, which is there was a long time all I wanted to do was, become a singer-songwriter and become well-known, and now I'm best known as Becca Stevens' husband. But fortunately, I love Thistle Farms. How many of you are Thistle farmers, have bought some Thistle Farm stuff? I bet some of you, right? Look at me, I'm even selling even right now. They make great Christmas presents. You can rush right out. Yeah, no, I met her at Vanderbilt. I was actually moonlighting at Divinity School. I was in my first publishing deal with Michael Purrier, who you mentioned, and trying to get my first of several record deals that were disasters. Thank you. And now you've probably all bought those records. It wasn't that I was that frustrated exactly, but I wanted to sort of, I wanted to explore my faith a little bit, and so I just took some courses. I took about 3 or 4 courses at Vanderbilt, and although I wasn't meant to be a preacher, it was an incredibly lucky situation, because the first week I was there, I met this beautiful young woman, Becca Stevens, and we were married within a year, and we've been married 32 years now. So.
That's great.
Yeah, and she was, she was a force even then. She was very interested in all kinds of really exciting things, and so yeah, that's been wonderful.
You, the two of you, have an ancestor, no, a progeny. That has also taken on a lot of the characteristics of both of you. What's up with Levi Hummon these days?
Yeah, so we have 3 sons, and our firstborn, our eldest, is Levi Hummon. Some of you might know his music. If you don't, you should check him out. Thanks. And yeah, he is wonderfully talented, and it's a little bit scary when he kind of came home. I remember after his sophomore year, he was down near Tampa in St. Petersburg at a school down there, and he came home and he said, "Dad, I think I'm going to go into the music business." Right? And he didn't go down there to study music. He was studying art, composition or something, and he was doing quite well. But I wasn't even aware that he had been playing guitar. He took his guitar with him growing up. He'd always been a good singer, always a natural singer, and he'd write these quirky songs, but I had no idea. And he'd been in the middle of a breakup, and I think when it really, really broke up and was tough on him, and he picked up the guitar, and apparently, he'd written a bunch of songs and made a little garage band record, and he handed it to me, and he was just like, "Yeah, I'm just going to go for it." And of course, Becca and I were like, "No, you're not. That's not a good idea." And so we looked at Belmont, and we looked at Berkeley and a few other schools that had songwriting programs. And nowadays there are 3 or 4 pretty. In my days in college, there was nothing like that. And he went to Belmont, and in the middle of his year at Belmont, he got a record deal and a publishing deal, and so that was it. No more Belmont. But yeah, no, we're very proud of him. He works real hard. We're proud of all our boys. But if you do check out his stuff, his single right now is doing really, really well. It's on Spotify. It's got about 5 million streams right now. It's called Good Taste. But he also sang, the moniker for Thistle Farms is Love Heals. And I actually co-wrote a song, Love Heals, with Levi and Tom Douglas, and we recorded that with Alison Krauss. So he also has a roots. He's a very pop country kind of guy, but he's also got a deep folk, roots country kind of vibe too.
That's neat. So, Marcus, how does all this jive with your parents and how you were raised, and what's? Yeah,
well, I mean, they're gone now, but they were great lovers of music. They were Methodists. They met. Yeah, let's cheer for Methodism. Why not? No, in fact, they met at a Methodist school. They met at Albion College in Michigan, and they met in choir, and. My father was a foreign service executive. He was a diplomat and worked primarily for AID, but also he did some work in the Joint Economic Commission between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. And so we grew up overseas. Until I was 17, I mostly lived overseas, West Africa, East Africa, Philippines, Tanzania. And, but one of the constants was just music. And, you know, my folks loved classical music, and they loved choral music, and they were big theater fans. And it was the 60s and 70s, so it was folk rock, and it was the Beatles, and we were in Africa for, you know, so it was Bob Marley, who, even though he was sort of Pan-African, he was Jamaican, but he was sort of a god at that time, and I learned a lot of stylistic things from that. And music was just, you know, they celebrated everything I did musically. We would do festival shows of theater things later in my career, and they would drive always to New York and be off Broadway, and they just enjoyed all of it. So I was really lucky, you know. Sometimes when kids decide they're going to go into the arts, you know, understandably their parents are worried, you know, and they may have been worried, but they were like, all right, you know, and always supportive. So I was very lucky in that way.
Good. Yeah. Well, how about some music? What do you say, folks? You ready for some music? Yeah. Go ahead and get set up and let her rip.
All right. Well, it is awfully good to be with you all tonight. And in these crazy times. These are wild times, are they not? Are they? I know there's a lot of anxiety. We're all feeling it in so many ways. And hopefully, let me just knocking my guitar around here. Hopefully we can just have some fun tonight, and I'll tell some stories. Been telling my dreams to the scarecrow of the places I'd like to see. Said, friend, do you think I'll ever get there? He just stands there smiling back at me. So I confess my sins to the preacher of the love I've been waiting to find. Is there a brown-eyed girl in my future? Said, son, you got nothing but time. How do you wait for heaven? Who has that much time? How do you keep your feet on the ground when you know you were born? You were born to fly. My daddy is grounded like the oak tree. My mama's steady as the sun. And you know I love my folks, but I keep staring down the road, looking for that one chance to run. Oh, I will soar away like the blackbird. I will dance in the wind like a seed. And I will plant my heart in the garden of my dreams. Grow up where I want, wild and free. How do you wait for heaven? Who has that much time? How do you keep your feet on the ground when you know you were born? You were born to fly. How do you wait for heaven? Who has that much time? How do you keep your feet on the ground when you know, baby, you were born? Tell you you were born. You were born to fly. Thank you. I wrote that. Y'all know that song? Any of you know that song? Yeah, any of you Sarah Evans fans at all? All right. How many? Okay. How many of you are country music fans at all? I know it's good. Good, because it's in Nashville, right? Because you go to some place, it's like a guilty pleasure, and you have to ask it twice. Like, no, tell me the truth. Yeah. So, my journey. Dan and I were talking today. We were kind of reminiscing. My journey has been just a mess. I had a pretty inauspicious beginning. I went to college in New England, and I had this really strange connection. Paul Anka, long story, I won't go into that one, called me, and he sent me to L.A., and actually Carmel initially, and I recorded a bunch of songs. He flew us out, and I never met the guy. I had my first experience of the music business and the harshness of it, and it was very strange. And I ended up staying. So I'd graduated from college. A buddy and I had played ball in college, and he said, "Well, you can just come stay in L.A." I lived with my Lithuanian grandmother and her sister, and then he decided to take a walk literally around the world. He just left. And so I was in L.A., and this is 1984, 85, and into 86. And I didn't have any money, really. I didn't have a car. I lived way down in South Central. I don't know how many of you know L.A., down and around Vermont and Pico, right near MacArthur Park. And, the house was great, and it was a great experience, but, it didn't have air conditioning. It was just, it was a real change from the sort of babysitting agency that was college in New England for me. And I lived there for a couple of years and didn't wash dishes, and then I graduated to waiting tables, I parked cars, I played clubs in Santa Monica, and I was sort of getting nowhere, but my mom and dad would call, and I'd say, oh, everything's going great, things are incredible, in fact, I remember I went home for the holidays, and I went down the hill. I had a girl in the neighborhood that I had dated, and I went down to see her. She wasn't there, and I remember she was Cuban, and her dad, I remember we had Cuban coffee, and we sat there, and he asked me how I was doing. His name was Frankie, and I told him all the stuff that was going on in my career, which is all lies, really, kind of just well meant, but. And I remember he just started laughing, and I remember sitting there, and I'm having that coffee, and I finally was like, well, Frankie, why are you laughing, And he looked at me, he goes, I'm so happy you're no longer dating my daughter. Yeah, and the thing about it was I remember just like, I walked away, and I was like, wow, this is what's become of me. Frankie's laughing because I'm not dating his daughter anymore. And it was interesting, but the humiliation actually was kind of beautiful, because it was, for me, it was like, okay, well, all right, I've obviously wasted my life, and I think I'm just going to go for it. I think I'm just going to, hang with it. And life is strange, and doors open, and I remember. How I got to Nashville was really, I was playing to supplement my income. Again, I remember I've got no car, and it's L.A. I would play piano, guitar bar at this nice restaurant, and I would do a bunch of, because I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, so I was doing like James Taylor and Joni Mitchell and Cat Stevens and Paul Simon and so forth. And then every now and then I would throw in one of my own songs. And so one night I was doing my, 45 on, 15 off, 45 on, and I had a cup, and they would, people would give you tips, hopefully. And I remember a gentleman came up, nicely dressed, older gentleman, and he put it, I don't know, $20, some big tip, that was like a huge tip. But I remember he also put his card in, and he said, you've been playing occasionally songs of your own. And I was like, yeah, like, yes. How good of you to notice. And he said, well, come to my office. Can you get to my office on Monday at such and such a time? Well, of course, I had no idea how. I didn't have a car, and the bus does, the system is pretty, but my answer was yes, of course. I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll be there. And I did get down there, and then when I got there, and it was on Sunset Boulevard, right, and I walked in, and there was like a life-size posters of El DeBarge and Sheila E. and Michael Jackson, and I realized, oh my gosh, this guy's like a real attorney, big time. And he said, I don't know how he knew this, but this is what he told me. He said, this is like January of 1986. He goes, there's about to be an explosion in Nashville, and that's where you belong. You don't belong here. Something is coming, and they're going to want singer-songwriters. And he goes, I can make a few phone calls for you. Can you get to Nashville? Can you get there? And of course I said yes, right? But I didn't have any money. So I called my sister, my older sister, and I said, can I borrow $700? And she gave me $700, and they had a company that I think is they're still around in LA called Ugly Duckling. I don't know if any of you ever heard of this. And what you do is you go to a car lot and you sign a contract. You indemnify the folks that own these cars. The cars have to turn on, right? They start. And after you go out the lot, they are no longer responsible. So I got a $700 yellow Mazda. And I started that car, and I quit all my jobs, and I put my guitar in the back, and I drove across the country. And I almost made it. A car smoke started coming out of it just outside of Dallas. Fortunately, I had an uncle I was really close to in Dallas, and he liked to rebuild old cars. He was a long-time Peace Corps guy, and so he had all these old cars, and he gave me a 1958 Saab, which if you saw today, you would say, wow, Fred Flintstone. Anyway, got to Nashville, and I'm going to play this song that Wynonna did. So this kind of turned my life around, because I really hadn't had much of anything happening. And then all of a sudden, Wynonna was going to cut this song, and then there was also the question of what the chords were in the song, and they called and they said, would you like to come in and play on the record? So I kind of went from having nothing happening to having this song and then getting to play, and I was with these great session players who I did know, Willie Weeks and Larry London and Matt Rawlings. These are big names. You know, Larry's no longer with us. And I was so scared, because I was scared I was going to screw up, get the guitar playing wrong. But she cut it. It was like, instead of Murphy's Law, it was the opposite. Suddenly everything went right, and it made the record, and that was a big deal. And then they took it to LA, to the LA Philharmonic. They put an orchestra on it, and it became the second single. It was kind of a notable single because she had a video. Wynonna was very, very big at that time, and she even kissed a guy in the video. This was big stuff. This is the kind of stuff you write about. And then it got nominated, went number one, and it got nominated for a Grammy. Not for a writer, not for the writers, though. Thanks. I have sailed a boat or two out on the wild blue. Yonder two dreams rarely come true. And as far as I can see, from this island of green, I will put my trust in just one thing. Only love sails straight from the harbor. Only love will lead us to the other shore. And out of all the flags I've flown, one flies high and stands alone. Only love. Peaceful water, raging sea, it is all the same to me. I can close my eyes and still be free. I am free. Let the waves come splashing down and the thunder roll around. I feel my feet on solid ground. Yes, I do. Only love saves. and stands alone. Only love. Only love sails straight from the harbor. Only love will lead us to the other shore. And out of all the flags I've flown, one flies high and stands alone. Oh, only love, yeah. Only love. Thank you. I was going to bring my banjo, but you're welcome. Although I do love banjo. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so again, a lot of my journey is about the things that I wanted to happen, that I was sure I was headed for. None of that really happened. But it's been a tremendous, fun, and exciting career anyway, and you know, you never know what God has in store for you, really. You do your best, doors open, you walk through them. Hopefully you make good choices. If you make a bad choice, you ask for forgiveness and move forward. And at any rate, I also have always been kind of fascinated by the artificial things that we put on ourselves. You know, I'm going to get married by such and such a day, right? Or I'm gonna, I got to have a kid by, so and so. But I'll have one. I'm not gonna have two, And guess what? Surprise! And but life is full of that. And I wrote a song about, I had certain things that I was supposed to do by the time I was 30, right? So that was a while ago. But I wanted to play this song. I was a running back in high school, through the line with my eyes wide down the field, for a future not so far, just the back seat of my car. With Catherine, I called her Kate. We made out after the prom date. I dropped her off late. Seems I was always running back in those days. When graduation came, it did not rain, but it poured, and that was God's way of saying, y'all don't know what you're in for. And 30, it seemed like dying. And now I'm 31. I wear my leather jacket to the bars so the boys will know that I'm still the favorite son. Too small to play big-time ball college, I dropped out after a couple years, and I volunteered at the local fire station. But there's not much burning ground here. So I decided to chase my dreams, to be an artist or a writer or maybe even a cage box fighter. But I ended up a door-to-door salesman selling Bibles and fashion magazines. And there were girlfriends, there were one-night stands, but no one special with a ring on her hand. I don't understand. Well, 10 years have gone and I'm still at home, and I'm all alone. And 30 seem like dying. Now I'm 31. leather jacket to the bars, so the boys will know that I'm still the favorite son. Well, there's no place like home. I walk down Main Street, and wouldn't you know, there's Kate, the baby stroller looking great. I smile, I say hey, and I go my way. Down to the football field and out to the 50-yard line. I just close my eyes. I can almost feel the Friday night lights and remember the good times. I remember the good old times when 30 seemed like dying. Yeah, that's the kind of song that I would hand into my publisher, and they'd say, well, what exactly are we supposed to do with that? It's just like writing musicals in Nashville. It's like, oh, great. He wrote another musical. Isn't this a pretty guitar? The first of my many record deals that didn't work out, this is the only thing I got out of. I got a deal with Gibson, and they gave me this beautiful guitar. So, yeah, you know, I finally did get a major label record deal, really after Only Love. You know, Nashville's funny, you know, something good happens and folks will give you a chance, and which is great, you know. And, you know, I went out on the road and I did radio tour. How many of you know what a radio tour is? Do you know what that is? You do? Yes, there must be, yeah. Well, you basically go out and you beg radio stations to play your song. And there's sort of like usually a floating number of like roughly 150 stations that report to these charts, and then they extrapolate to the larger number of country stations. And they put me in country, and which made some sense, except, you know, I was kind of a hybrid banjo, piano, guitar-y kind of guy. I didn't have the same background. I mean, it's kind of weird going down to Texas and they say, where'd you grow up? And you say, Lagos, Nigeria. It's kind of a downer. But, you know, so it was very interesting. But, like, you know, they basically didn't play me, you know, like country radio, and that's all right. That's okay. The time it wasn't. Time it was really a bummer. But now it just seems kind of like, well, you know, that's the way it went down. And when I was being let go of Sony, they were bringing in a group called the Dixie Chicks. And I actually knew this group because, again, I had family in Texas, and they had been a big touring group, a lot of bluegrass festivals and so forth. And they had this new singer, Natalie, who's a daughter of Lloyd Maines, who's a real famous pedal steel player and one of the great producers, really in America, I think, in roots music. And then Paul Worley, who had signed me at Sony but then had left Sony, they set me up with some rights. And so I started to write with this group. And so it's kind of funny because the first time I wrote with Marty, I primarily wrote with Marty, the fiddling sister, for those of you that know the Chicks. We actually wrote Ready to Run, which would subsequently go on to be a first single of their biggest selling record, Fly, and which is actually the biggest selling record by any female group ever in any genre. But we didn't, you know, we were just like meeting at a coffee shop. She had to get on a bus. We wrote this crazy song that kind of sounded Celtic, kind of sounded like blues. I figured I don't know what's going to happen. Did the demo. No one ever said anything to me. But the second time I got to write with Marty, they had sold 7 million records, you know, like in the space of 3 singles. And so all of a sudden, you know, I didn't have a deal anymore. And it was like, whoa, I got, you know, this is a great opportunity, right? And so I really wanted to write something to get on this record because I figured, 7 million would go on to be, even that first record was like 12, 13 million records. Anyway, we write this song, and I don't know how many of you know this much about songwriting or co-writing, the culture of co-writing, but it wasn't a very good song. That's the truth. That happens. And I remember, the first time I wrote with Marty, we met at Fido's in the Village, and we just, we wrote over at the house. I live right nearby. The second time I wrote with him, I had to drive like an hour out of town. It was a gated community. There were like armed guards. Each of the girls had their own place. I knew that I had till 3 o'clock, and then Gary Burr was coming. And Gary Burr is a hit songwriter. He had about as many hits as anybody in the 90s. And I was like, okay, we're going to get a song done. So we write this terrible song. And it's like 2 o'clock. And I'm like, oh, man, I blew it. Right? And Marty's like, she goes, well, would you like some lunch? That's what I remember about that day. She goes, I got a can of SpaghettiOs. Right? And I'm like, yeah, I would. I would love some SpaghettiOs, Marty. Because I'm hurting, right? And I know they're never going to cut this song. And she heats up the SpaghettiOs, and I got my bowl, I'm eating them. And she goes, I love that song you wrote today, but I really had kind of wanted to write a title. I have this title, my sister's getting married, and I want to write this song for her wedding, right? And I'm like, we still got, I'm a professional songwriter at this point. I'm like, tell me the title. We are writing this song. We're going to get it done before Gary Burr gets there. And she says, yeah, okay, so I saved this title for you. I'm like, this is getting better and better because I see myself, getting this cut, and then I'm going to be like close with the family, like they did at the wedding. This is going to be I'll always have this. And she goes, and this is a true story. And she says, yeah. So the title is Calgon, Take Me Away. Well, I'm old enough where Calgon Take Me Away is a beautiful naked woman in a tub with her leg hanging out and bubbles going up, and they'll think there's like already a song, right? It's soap. For those of you that don't know, this is a soap. And so I said, well, so it's like a parody. And I remember her looking at me like, what? And I was like, so like our love comes clean, right? And suddenly it occurred to her, she goes, oh, no. No, not Calgon. Cowboy. Emily is marrying a cowboy, as in he has a ranch and breaks horses in San Antonio. I was very pleased. I want to touch the earth. I want to break it in my hands. I want to grow something wild and unruly. I want to sleep on the hard ground in the comfort of your arms, on a pillow of blue bonnets, a blanket made of stars. Oh, it sounds good to me. She said, cowboy, take me away. Fly this girl as high as you can into the wild blue. Set me free, oh, I pray. Closer to heaven above and closer to you. Closer to you. I wanna walk and not run. I wanna skip and not fall. I wanna look at the horizon and not see a building standing tall. I wanna be the only one for miles and miles, except for maybe you and your simple smile. Oh, it sounds good to me. Sounds so good to me. She said, cowboy, take me away. Fly this girl as high as you and into the wild blue. Set me free, oh, I pray, closer to heaven above and closer, so much closer to so I want to touch the earth, I want to break it in my hands, and I want to grow something wild and unruly. Thank you. So yeah, I write a lot of wacky stuff. Once I got off the road, by that time I'd had 5 record deals, and the last one was in London, rock, kind of a folk rock deal. I was part of a duo called the Raphaels, and my partner Stuart Adamson was a great Scottish poet writer. He was the lead singer, guitarist. And he basically did everything for the group Big Country. Some of you may know Big Country. In a big country, dreams stay with you. And he was, before he passed away, they were still opening for Rolling Stones. If that gives you some idea. They're still big in England. And great musician. And he'd moved to Nashville. And so we made this record called Supernatural, and as I say, it was a mixture. It had some Celtic aspects of it. I was very interested in that too, and he embodied it. But he died very tragically, took his own life, and he suffered from addiction and bipolarism, and that was kind of it for me, the journey of I'm going to be a big, big star. And I decided to start putting out independent records and just give songs, and hopefully they'd get cut. And then I decided to start writing musicals and, trying different things. And that's been a wonderful journey. I've done lots of work here in town and around, and in regional theaters, and a little bit of off-Broadway work. And I have one show that was supposed to open at arena stages in D.C. this summer called American Prophet, which I wrote with the Charles Randolph Wright, who created Motown, with Berry Gordy, and we have the great music director Joseph Joubert, who did Color Purple, and just a tremendous group of people. It's about the life of Frederick Douglass up into the 1865, the death of Lincoln, and been a passion of mine for quite a while. That show, I started it 6 years ago. I was commissioned by the Episcopal Cathedral of Nashville Christ Church to write about the prophetic, and I asked if I could write about an American prophet, and I chose Douglas. And that was, that journey. These things, they're like, it's like buying a dog. You buy a dog, like, oh, it's a cute puppy, right? And then it's old and it has arthritis, and you're like, what am I going to do, right? So these things live on and on. This has been a labor of love, because I do love Douglas and his vision for America, but a lot of the things that I have written have been uniquely not commercial. I mean, that's like my specialty, is thinking up theater stuff that no one's ever going to want, to buy a ticket to. Probably, it's really kind of an odd thing. So, and then a few years into this fascination with musical theater and writing, and sort of a lot of it was historical at times, and I did get to write. I ended up writing this opera because I thought, it would be fun. Let's try doing music for the whole night. Like that. It wasn't so much thinking about, well, I want to write something that sounds like Mozart or Puccini or whatever. It was really more about, what if you just told the whole story through music and really light orchestrations and things? What about that? So I ended up doing a piece with Nashville Opera called Surrender Road, which was a great experience. It too was a uniquely not commercial idea. It was a day in the life of a boxer, all told inexplicably in Shakespeare quotes. Go figure. I don't know. I was working with TPAC at that time about trying to communicate to students why Shakespeare is so important, and the idea that it's poetry for all time, and that even though the poetry can be it's very tied to the plot in one sense, the plots which virtually none of which he wrote, but you could lift the language and you could drop it at any time and at any time in human history, and it would still ring. And so I used sort of a generic American idea, a fighter who was paid to throw fights, and he decided, today's the day I'm gonna fight, you know. And anyway, as you can see, that's like Phantom of the Opera, isn't it? It's just incredibly commercial. So I just thought I'd, in the land of crazy songs that I write for different shows that you have never seen, this is something which actually is a piece I've been working on about a little bit like the song I wrote earlier about a broken down jock from high school, which is partly also my story. And this is called American Heartbreak Blues. I met a girl with strawberry hair, working the Renaissance fair, selling lukewarm beer, had a dog named Shakespeare. Thought I'd win her heart with a sonnet or a country song, simple and honest. But I caught her in Sherwood Forest, making out with Sir Gawain, and I've never been one to take what wasn't mine. Overstay my welcome to American Heartbreak Blues. I met a tattoo artist in Seattle. Across her body was inked in the Battle of Gettysburg, the wheat field, the little round top. Just like the rebels, I was trying to cross her danger zone. Lord, I had a craving for that little town in southern Pennsylvania. She ran off with a circus one night. I did not follow and I did not fight it, 'cause I've never been one to take what wasn't mine. Overstay my welcome to American Heartbreak Blues. I fell in love with a girl who sold oranges by the road. She was Nicaraguan, her skin the color of cocoa butter. She was a voracious lover. Orange peels around the room under the cover. She said, don't fall for me, I am illegal. I said, well, I'm as American as a bald eagle. I come from persecuted Jews and Mennonites who sailed into the harbor, into New York Harbor, with eyes as misty and hopeful as the morning light. And I've never been one to take what wasn't mine. Overstay my welcome to American Heartbreak Blues. My son, as I mentioned, is in the songwriting business and is a singer. He's a very good singer. He's a really good writer too. He's a groovy writer. And you got that, Bill? By the way, I appreciate getting to work here and getting to see Bill Eaton and Dan Keene again after kind of years. And I don't know, it's just fun being in a Methodist room anyway. Makes me think of my mom and dad. Used to chase that boy home from school, called him freckle-faced, red-headed fool. He was different, he wasn't cool like me. Sticks and stones didn't break any bones, but we never let well enough alone. And one day, he ran away from home, you see. And I passed him as he walked away. And in his eyes I heard him say, he said, one of these days you're gonna love me. Sit down by yourself and think about the time you pushed and shoved me, and what good friends we might have been. Then you're gonna sigh a little, maybe even cry a little, but one of these days you are gonna love me. Addie Sue was a small town beauty. I took one look at her, had to pull her to me. Lord knows she should have seen right through me when I promised her the world. 17, you only want one thing, and I left her standing in my high school ring. Innocent tears in the pouring rain as I walk away. I still see her in my dreams. To this day she's whispering, she says, one of these days you're gonna love me. You sit down by yourself and think about the time you turned from me, and what good friends we might have been. Then you're gonna sigh a little, maybe even cry a little. One of these days you are gonna love me. Everybody stands up, the congregation sings. It's a song of sweet forgiveness, and as the chorus rings, the wind blows clear my memory, and the pages start to turn, and suddenly I'm singing the moment that I learned. One of these days I'm gonna love me and feel the joy of sweet release. Yes, one of these days I'll rise above me, yes I will. And at last I'll find some peace, then I'm gonna cry a little, laugh a little, but one of these days I'm gonna love me. Thank you. Guess I've got a little bit of Hey, I just thought it might be kind of fun. I saw an old friend of mine here is in your congregation. Roger, are you still around? Roger Day? Did he run off? He's afraid I was going to call him to come up. Hey, Roger and I used to go to church for many years, and always been a fan of his work. And he is, well, he's in the first round of the Grammys right now, and he may, in a couple of days, maybe in a full nomination position. So for the good karma, he better come up here and sing something. That's what I'm thinking.
You want to try?
I'll play along. I'll just watch what your hands are doing
Okay.
and sing. I kind of remember some of this.
Okay.
You take the seat of
No.
the glory.
Thank you.
And you play straight up G on this.
What's that?
Maybe I should give up on this, Bill. It's pretty much a G thing? Or,
G, yeah, G.
And you're going to take the cape off and go G?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to, so as not to hurt people's ears, switch to a different instrument.
Is this a?
It's a regular tune, so yeah.
Okay.
So that was A.
What's that?
Here.
All right. It is so good to see you, Marcus. We had some magical moments singing on Palm Sunday. We would do this song. Everybody would join in. So the chorus is really, really simple. So if you catch on to the words and you got some good harmony vocals, you can join in. Hopefully I remember the words.
So G.
Yeah.
C.
Somebody long ago said everyone shared one soul. Turn back the clock, turn back the page, turn back time again. I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Somebody turned and said, that city is long since dead. Don't waste your breath, don't waste your words, don't waste time again. I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling Jerusalem. There were 3 stars, they were shining in the east, falling fast, falling just beyond my reach. I want to see them shine as one again above my head in Jerusalem. Somebody long ago said everyone shared one soul. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling, I'm calling, I'm calling Jerusalem. Calling Jerusalem.
Roger Day, folks.
Love you, Marcus. Oh, yeah. Those of y'all who know, my wife Jody teaches our spot in church here is we teach all the 3-year-olds, and I sing to them when it's our just like at St. A's. So I write children's music, and I have a new album called Invincible that's out, and so we're kind of have our fingers crossed that maybe we'll get lucky with the Grammys. So, anyway, Marcus Hummon, everybody.
Forget how high that is, though. It's like, calling. That's a beautiful song. Yeah, we many years we do that on Palm Sunday, and we got so many musicians. Like I'm sure you guys do too. Our San Augustine's community is filled with musicians. In fact, this year one of the fun things I got to do in the pandemic is I got to write a mass, my first mass. I've been doing some choral work. But I did a St. Augustine's Mass using Episcopal liturgy, and then also, created a bunch of pieces, and that was such a joy. And we raised a bunch of money for our music community. We did a sort of premiered it and raised $30,000 in one Sunday morning, and we're able to give a lot of our musicians, who are, a lot of us are just those of us that really rely on touring. We just been stuck. I'm not exactly that. I only do probably 30, 40 dates a year. The person who really tours a lot in my family has become my wife. She has been going out and talking about Thistle Farms. So for those of you that don't know the work that my wife does, she is an Episcopal minister. She's the Episcopal chaplain at Vanderbilt, and she runs the sort of all the St. Augustine's Chapel is Episcopal liturgy, but we have, it's sort of the Protestant, I guess, service at Vanderbilt, and it's a pretty large, fairly large community. And her passion, though, is working with women who've been trafficked, and this has been her passion for most of the time that I've known her in our marriage. And she started out with a program called Magdalene, which some of you will know and have, I'm sure, been involved in. That was a new idea around systemic issues of violence and predatory behavior and the world of trafficking in America. And it kind of came out of prison ministry, and she had an idea for a 2-year program, a residential program, which had a variety of things which were quite different in terms of the approach. But she kind of got to a certain point where she felt that, the women, who, average, 75 arrests, and, folks who've been on the street by 14, all sexualized by 7 or 8 years old. And it was very difficult for anyone to find a job, no matter what mountain you'd climbed. And so she decided that she was going to start a social enterprise company, and this is what Thistle Farms is, Bath and Body Products. They have many products. And now there's an international coalition group too, groups all over. And it's become the largest social enterprise of its kind in America now for women who've been trafficked. So I'm very proud of her. But I'm also just proud of, thank you. I'm also just proud of the women of Magdalene, the women of Thistle Farms, who really run this company, and that's sort of the point. And it's not a living wage. It's it's not a good wage. It's a wage for put a roof on your house and have a car and health care, and it's a different vision. And it's now we have sister organizations all across all 50 states. And as I said, in I think 19 or maybe more than that now internationally, we have 3 sons, and so they grew up in and out of like summer jobs, was working for Thistle Farms, which is interesting and I think really great for them, even though some of the stories are just so horrific, but. So I'm going to tell you one story. I'm going to sing a song. This is the song, kind of speaks for itself. about a young woman who came through Magdalene and Thistle Farms and then was deported. I just want to tell you her story. And she was a very good friend of mine, too. And this is called Rosanna. She was smuggled into the land of the free with a gag on her mouth, roped hands and feet. Please don't hurt me, she said to the strange man. I'm just 14 years old, she said, trying to stand. I come from Honduras. My name is Rosanna. Well, we taught her how to get good and high, how to satisfy a man who was willing to buy, or put a gun to her head and have his own way with a sister, a daughter, maybe a mother someday, somebody's sister, daughter, or mother someday. And she brought a little baby into the world, a brown-skinned, black-eyed American girl. She prayed to God a prayer of thanks. It's me again, Lord, your daughter Rosanna. Hola, hallelujah, Hosanna. But I feed Jesus with my own hand. But I let Jesus step on my land. Or would I poison my well, sick a dog on a child of God like Rosanna? She had 2 years clean, a job and a car, a roof over her head and a mended heart. Her little girl in school, she was headed home. The police pulled her over, said, your tires are low, let me see your green card and I'll let you go. Well, we put her in a prison in Louisiana, 6 months behind bars for poor Rosanna. Her daughter cried out, oh, set my mama free. No damn way, says the ICE. Back to Honduras, she's a deportee. But I feed Jesus with my own hand. But I let Jesus step on my land. Would I poison my well, sick a dog on a child of God like Rosanna? Rosanna came right back to the land of the free to find her daughter. And she made it as far as the Rio Grande, naked as a baby, clothes in her hand, waiting on the helicopters to pass, kneeling down in the tall, dry grass, silent as a prayer on Easter Mass. And when the dogs are gone, they race for the river, cold and afraid, and made Rosanna shiver. On the other side, everybody keeps running like white-tailed deer. When you fire a gun, they run to where the trucks are gonna come. And it's 3 days of poison wells, and it's hot as hell. And her friend Carla, she don't look so well. Carla dies in the shade of an old thorn tree. Don't cry, Rosanna, just let her be. It's another free meal for the coyote. Would I feed Jesus with my own hand? But I let Jesus step on my land. Or would I poison my well, sick a dog on a child of God like Rosanna? Well, it's money for the mafia and it's American green. It's a truck ride to Houston packed in like sardines. It's back to the streets to find her way home. The same old trick, sell sex, get stoned, handshaking, talking to your daughter on the payphone. One day we all have to cross the waters with our brothers, our sisters, our sons, and our daughters. Just as sure as the moon swims the Rio Grande, one day she'll walk through our door, hallelujah, Hosanna, welcome home, Rosanna. Well, I'm just going to play a couple more, and I do thank you for listening. And I haven't gotten to do many shows. Hope it doesn't show if I seem a tad rusty. But it's really fun to do one, even though it's hard to have you all so far away. But it's not. I'm not saying you look judgy. I'm not saying you're judgy. But there is that tendency when people are far away to go, I don't think they like that. So there's some interesting things about songwriting that you may or may not know. So I think one of the things that's really kind of groovy about songwriting is how people really have no idea what you do, you know, and if they do, sometimes they're not sure that's really a job anyway. And, you know, it's like, if you think about the life of American songwriters, think about, I often think of this, it's Frank Sinatra, right? And they say that he recorded over 2,000 songs, you know, and imagine like the really world music without Sinatra. I mean, just Sinatra, just him for a moment, or Elvis or Barbra Streisand. None of them wrote any songs, right? They didn't write any songs. That, you know, that wasn't, and the thing about it is, for every one of those songs that you love and is part of your life, there's some writer in some room somewhere, you know, etching away at those things. And the anonymity of it is, it's kind of a cool thing, but it takes some getting used to. And I remember, so the first time anything like really mega big happened in terms of like awards, you know, as I had mentioned, you know, I was writing with the Chicks, and who knew, right? And all of a sudden, they're massive and you know, super talented. I didn't mean like who knew because they're not talented. I knew they were talented. But you don't know when something's going to take off. And then next thing, Ready to Run, which is this song that was the first single of this album, Fly, it gets nominated for a Grammy for Song of the Year. So another thing that you may not know, for songwriters can only win one Grammy. There's only one thing you can win, and that's Song of the Year. So it's like, it's steep, right? And when it happened, when I knew that I got nominated, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, like the Staples Center, LA, you know, I'm going to go back to LA victorious, you know, instead of, you know, schlepping away like I did, you know, washing dishes and you know, saying hi to the, you know, drug dealers sometimes on my way into work. And when I think back on it, I was like, man, this is going to be my victory. This is this great moment. And Becca, like, we're going to go together. And we, you know, we hadn't had, you know, this was like a really big experience. She got like a new dress. I got a suit. I didn't have a suit. I had to buy a suit. And so we went, and it was, you know, amazing. But I did that thing that people do. I was like, oh, you know, it doesn't matter if I win or not. I'm so grateful. You know, my favorite one is I'm humbled. I'm humbled to be nominated. But you know, and I kind of believe that at some level. And I have my new suit, you know, and so we go. So here's another thing. And again, some of you may know this, may be redundant, but so the Grammys, the TV show is like they pick, you know, Justin Bieber and Chris Stapleton, whatever the hottest things are, and that's what pretty much the show is. But Grammys themselves reflect classical music and, you know, bluegrass and you name it. It's worldwide, right? Classic, everything. And so they have like an 8-hour ceremony before the big evening ceremony. So we were, and anyway, so the song was up for Single of the Year, it was up for Song of the Year, right? And then it was part of the Album of the Year, which then that would be in the evening, but the chance for me to win was the daytime, right? And so I was thinking that whole, you know, I'm not really, this is just so great being nominated. And so we go in and we sit down, and I'm sitting, and Becca's here, and I kid you not, I look to my left, right, and there's B.B. King, right, and Neil Young. Yeah. And suddenly I wanted to win. In such a bad way, it's almost embarrassing to. And I remember I turned to Becca and I said, Becca, I need a mint. because my mouth was getting dry. And she gave me a mint, and I sucked on the mint. And then they're like, and they're going, they're getting close. You can see on the thing, they're getting close to the country awards. And the chicks were so big at that time. They literally were so big. They weren't even sitting there. They were coming, they go, now the country awards. And in comes an entourage. And there are the chicks, 3 of them, right? And they have bodyguards, right? Great, big Dallas Cowboy, middle linebacker, big men. But, Becca's a preacher, which means she doesn't care about anything. Right? I mean that lovingly. And she turned to me, she goes, oh, there's the girls. You go say hi. Why don't you go say hi? And I was like, I will go say hi to my personal friends, the Dixie. I will. And I get up, and I'm like, excuse me, baby. Right, I'm kind of moving. Excuse me, Neil, right? Just true story. And I go up, and you forget. You forget. Because you're thinking, these are people that I know, that I write songs with, right? What does it look like? You're complete strangers walking up, right? Why do they have bodyguards in the first place? That's right. So I get a forearm, I get like a boom, forearm shiver right to my chest, and I go, damn. Oh, God. And it really hit me. He hit me. Popped me, And then I'm like making my way back to excuse me, baby. Pardon me, Neil. And Becca's like, well, what did you say hi? And I was like, yes, of course I did. And they did. And now the country music, the single of the year, and the winner is Ready to Run. And it wins. It wins the single, right? And the girls go up and they get the award. And I'm thinking, this is it, right? I'm going in. Here's the saddest part, here's the funniest part. I had an acceptance speech. Let me tell you, they do not wait for songwriters to give an acceptance speech. That just does not happen. So they go, and the song of the year is, and it was, honey, I'm home, and I had a hard day. Pour me a cold one, and oh, by the way, Shania Twain. That's not Ready to Run. And I'm going to play this thing for you, and I just want you to know something, to tell you one other thing about songwriting. And that is that this is something that this is really inside information. At the Grammys, there are parties for losers. That's right. There are parties just for losers. When the train rolls by, gonna be red this time. When the girl gets that look in her eye, gonna be ready this time. When mama says she sure looks good in white, gonna be ready, yes I am ready this time. Ready, 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 ready to run. All I'm ready to do is have some fun. What's all this talk about? Love. Talk about. I wanna feel the wind blowing through my hair. I wanna be ready this time. Get a ticket to anywhere. I wanna be ready this time. It feels like I'm starting to care. I better get ready. Ready this time. Ready, 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 ready to run. All I'm ready to do is have some fun, fun, fun. What's all this talk about? Love. I'm ready, yes, I'm ready to run. I'm ready, oh. more song for you tonight. Again, thank you to Bill and Dan, and thanks for giving me a chance to come on out and play after so long. I'm not doing much live. So this song, this song, I broke my my bad luck. We did, in fact, Rascal Flatts cut a beautiful, beautiful record on this. It was written, 27 years ago. And there was a number of recordings. I probably did the first piano version, and the first version that was actually my co-writer is Jeff Hanna, the lead singer of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. They did it on an album called Acoustic. And the other writer is a fellow that I met one evening, Bobby, and he shared a very inspirational thought with me that night. And so we wrote this song, and the job was to get it on the Dirt Band's album, and we did, although they didn't use the piano, which is, I had started it on piano. There are really a lot of funny, kind of odd stories around this song. But it eventually did make its way to Rascal Flatts, and they cut what was just an extraordinary record on it. And we did, in fact, get to go to the Grammys again, and it was up for Song of the Year, country, and also across the board. And here's a funny thing that happened there is to change my luck, because I'd been to a few award ceremonies at that point, and I'd always gone with my wife, Becca, and I was always losing. So I decided to mix it up. And I brought young Levi, and that was, exciting for him and for me too. And I remember that we were sitting, another story of who's sitting next to me, I was sitting, and Burt Bacharach was just to my right? And he's very small. I don't know if, I didn't know that. I thought maybe he'd be really big. He's a small, little, handsome fellow, older, and but quiet, and didn't, and when we won, when they said in the Song of the Year, "Bless the Broken Road," I let out a war yelp that, it was like at Custer's Last Stand, it would have fit in. I mean, it was like, yes! And I remember how frightened Burt Bacharach looked. And it's actually something I treasure. I hold it in my heart. So I want to play this song for you, and the thing about songs, is you have no idea what people will attach themselves to. And I've been very fortunate in my life to be a part of a few songs that people seem to have taken on in their lives in different ways, but perhaps none more than this one in a way. At least that's the way I assess it. And I was thinking about, again, about Thistle Farms and Becca. Some years back, she decided she wanted to look at women's prisons across the country. So she put together this book called Finding Your Way Home, sort of reflections of the women who'd come through the doors. And it wasn't like she was going out and she wanted to, we already have a long list of folks that want to be part of Magdalene. And I think that she wanted to go and see what was happening. And then she also wanted to meet with large groups and to just speak a word of hope, to just say it's not the end. It may seem as if it's hopeless. It's not. There are different ways to organize and different ways to love one another and to be proactive and grateful and to change the world. And the idea that love does heal, it's not just a saying. It isn't. And so she did, and I got to go on some of these with Don Schlitz, who wrote The Gambler. And because that was part of our thing, we're from Nashville. And so when we would go, Becca would speak, and we'd have women from Magdalene, they would speak, and there was this great camaraderie. Of course, they'd spent so many years in prison. And then because we were reflecting country music in Nashville, Dom would get up and do The Gambler, and I would get up and do, Bless the Broken Road. We did other songs, but that was sort of like, it was his big thing. And I remember this one time we were at one of the prisons. It was all across the country, from New York, Houston, just wherever. But we were in Harlan County, Kentucky, and we're up in the hills and coal mining territory, and so here we are in this big. We're outside, and the razor wire everywhere, and the guards are there with the guns, and the women, they followed out, I don't know, 600-700 women, and they were wearing gray. And different prisons use different colors, right? And so in Harlan, Kentucky, it was gray and white. That's something that I remember. And I remember I'm supposed to play this song, right? And obviously I know this song. I play this song all the time. And I remember I got out there, and I'm looking at the audience, and they're looking at me, and I started to feel like I could, like you could feel, I could see them so well. I could feel what they were feeling at some level. And I got into the first verse, and folks were singing along. In prison, they're singing along in the razor wire on the sunny day in Kentucky. And then I couldn't finish it because I could see the second verse. I knew I could see it. I could see what it was going to say. I think of the years I spent passing through, right? And I couldn't find it, And I just stood there like just arpeggiating on the guitar, and Becca turned to me and she kind of looked at me and she started to sing. And I thought, well, that's probably, things like that are the greatest privilege a songwriter has. If you can be part of something that creates some poetry that means something in folks' lives. I mean, that is the thing. I set out on their way, it was many years ago, hoping I would find true love along that broken road. But I got lost a time or two, and I wiped my brow, I kept pushing through. 'Cause I couldn't see how every sign pointed straight to you. That every long lost dream led me to where you are, and others who broke my heart, well, they were like northern stars, pointing me on my way into your loving arms. This much I know it's true. That God bless the broken road and led me straight to you. Thank you. I think of all the years I spent just passing through. I'd like to take that time I lost, give it back to you. But you just smile and you take my hand, 'cause you've been there, you understand. It's all part of a grander plan that is coming true. And every long lost dream led me to where you are. And others who broke my heart, well, they were like northern stars, pointing beyond my way into your loving arms. This much I know it's true. That God bless the broken road, led me straight to you. Now I'm just rolling home into my lover's arms. And this much I know it's true. That God blessed the broken road and led me straight to you. And thank you all, folks. Thanks so much.
Magnificent. The pride of West Africa, Marcus Hummon. Thank you, Marcus. Man, that was amazing. Thank you again, Marcus. Thank you for coming. Glad you're here, and we'll see you next month. If you want a little snack on the way out, we've got some treats back there, a little dessert to top off the night or something. There's also a contribution box in the rear of the room if you'd care to help us keep this thing going. More than anything, we thank you for keeping it going by showing up, both you folks here and you folks online. Very, very glad you were here, and we'll see you in a month for a Christmas show. God bless. Bye.